psychology student and an intern with Dr. Shiva Singh at a clinic, Talkspace, a mental health student. In the above backdrop and in congruence with the 2022 World Mental Health Theme, which says, make mental health and well-being a global priority for all, we at Talkspace are focusing on children and adolescents' mental health in today's episode. To talk about the same, we have with us psychologist Natasha Mehta, who heads the counseling department at the very prestigious Bansang's S.M. Shetty Educational Institution, Powai, Mumbai. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Hi, thank you, Miri. Pleasure being here.
So, ma'am, you cater a large group of children and adolescents. Please tell us about your experience. What kind of mental health disorders do you come across, and which are some of the most prevalent symptoms?
Right. So, thank you for the question, Millie. It's very important to know that kids often come to school with much more weighing them than just the books and the backpacks. When I started my career as a school psychologist or even as a psychologist, I was told that, oh, what kind of problems can kids have, and how is that even like, why do they need counseling and all such things, etc. But it's a very, very critical area that one needs to address their focus on. Now, coming to the question about disorders, like you mentioned earlier, that mental health need in school is very important because 1 in 5 children may be suffering from some kind of a concern for which they might need help. Or, as you say, 1 in 10 young people, may have a mental health challenge that may be severe enough to kind of impair the way that they are functioning in the world, in the community, in their lives, or academics, whatever areas. So, it's very important that they are kind of identified at this level, and there are several commonly seen conditions that we come across, especially because the school believes in a very inclusive approach. If we talk about disorders, and yes, ADHD at the younger age group, you'll see a lot of ADHD, you'll see anxiety, you'll see phobias, you'll see grief related, you'll see dysfunctional family, you'll also see depression even in the younger ones, anxiety, addiction particularly related to gadgets and digital addiction. So these are very common issues that generally come up. Also, issues related to eating disorders. So you'll see this very commonly. Along with that, other concerns, people may like to call it, but I think these are more neurodiversity related areas that need to be supported. So whether it's learning disability or autism or Down syndrome or intellectual disability. Yeah, the list is quite endless.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, can you also tell us about some of the symptoms through which we can identify these disorders?
If at all certain behavior or emotional needs or thoughts are coming in the way of their daily functioning, it is somewhere limiting their daily functioning, that is when you need to understand that this is some kind of a red flag, right? For every disorder, there are going to be like so many symptoms. So for each disorder, there's going to be a different symptom. But in the class level, you will generally see that this is coming in the way of their academics or behavioral, if we want to break it in a very broader spectrum. So if there is an academic related issue, you can see it in their performance, of course. And if you investigate a bit more, you can understand it through their writing, reading, math, at what level the child's chronological age is, and how much the child is performing in class. So maybe a class 4 child is at a second grade level functioning. So these are things you can easily identify just to be aware that, okay, this is an area that requires some intervention. Similarly, in behavior also, the child is very fidgety, restless, or impulsive, or not following discipline, or not participating even. So there are a lot of children who don't want to participate, or rather just shy away from participation. So participation can be in all kinds of areas, not just academic related, but even they don't want to participate in dance or mingle with friends much. So that is also something that can be considered as that should be rather considered as a red flag, and one needs to investigate further in that. Of course, other very evident behaviors like bullying, hitting, not eating their tiffin, or all of these things, or even if you notice like the child is not well groomed. Now that is also one thing that you can see, and then we must further investigate. So that is there any underlying emotional concerns, whether in the child or any neglect in the family. So these are just major things that a teacher or anybody who's observing the child in class can kind of keep in mind.
Yes, ma'am. So you mentioned that many a times these disorders can go unnoticed if there is no support from the family or the teachers, and it is also very critical to address these disorders as they can cause impairment in various areas of functioning. So, ma'am,
Right.
in what ways do you think the school can help students, parents, and the teachers become aware of these mental health disorders?
Right. So what we do in our school is we run several workshops, we run several programs for awareness. So of course we have teacher trainings initially for identifying of the disorders, red flags that they should look out for each disorder. Rather, we sit and we have trainings with the teachers. We also psychoeducate parents on time to time basis, wherein they can look at the healthy functioning of the child, and in what times can they seek help of the counseling center, or also trainings to destigmatize the whole concept of mental health. What we also do is in fact, I believe that we can do this creatively, that we glorify the concept of mental health. We don't need to always talk about illness or disorders. We can glorify it by not adding. In fact, it is a very present and a potent area of the area of wellness of mental health. So, making your stakeholders comfortable with the idea, making mental health more approachable, more relatable. So that's when we can get more people to understand about mental health. We have to take it to the masses. It cannot be. It's so the need is so high that it cannot be just left to mental health professionals. So, like for example, that when you have a eye infection, you go to a doctor, eye doctor, or when you have a certain stomach ache, you go to your physician, or when you have a fever. So, not that you may know all the signs of it and you will be diagnosing it, but at least having that much basic information which is fundamental, that okay, this is a red flag, and for this I need to approach a therapist or a counselor. And as a matter of fact, it's a very multidisciplinary thing that needs to also be, which we do especially, is that we focus on the multidisciplinary aspect of things, and we introduce to the parents, teachers, or even children, that who are these professionals that can be approached. Yeah, so that all helps, having awareness programs and also doing it in a more positive way, uh, taking it to the masses rather than making it very clinical alone.
Yes, ma'am. I completely agree. And in fact, that's a really great idea you suggested of doing it in a positive way and glorifying this topic
Yes.
instead of seeing it as a taboo or a stigma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even other small things that we have been successful in doing at school and that has worked for us is, keeping booklets or mental health magazines, so that even if you're sitting in the reception area, you can just read it, and that gives you information. You don't need to necessarily attend a big program to gain a certain message.
Yes, ma'am. So now moving on to the next question, that it's important, as you said, it's important that people feel safe. Then only they can talk about their problems.
Absolutely.
Seek
Very
out for help. So, ma'am, how do you think the school authorities or the teachers can encourage children to share and discuss their mental health difficulties?
Yeah, what happens is a lot of times we talk about our glories and we don't talk about our stories. So we need to share our stories and not just keep harping upon about the glories. Children need to know that we are human as adults, if we are the role models, and children also need to know that we are humans. We go through our ups and downs. We we can make talking about mental health very cool in the class, where teachers can have open conversations about certain topics, or So that way it really helps. It helps when you kind of talk to them about your likes, about your dislikes. It helps when you talk about boundaries, when you talk about it's okay to say a no, or maybe just be expressed more. Very importantly, and something so common that we can do is just be expressive and communicative. Don't just assume that they will understand everything. Sometimes we have to make sure that we are making that space wherein mental health related discussions are honored. So we can create that space in our classrooms and also in our homes, wherein we are taking time to discuss on the dinner table, or during a recess a teacher can just visit or show them some videos. That's what we do in our school also. We show them some videos related to emotions, or about depression or anxiety, bullying, all these topics. So it can just be dealt with in a very not always needs to be a very serious discussion. It can be dealt in a very non-serious manner. uh, and that helps. Those things make children know that this is a safe space, and we make sure that counseling center, the image of counseling center is not just limited to disorders, because we conduct a whole lot of other programs, and we run like these programs of life skill education or social emotional learning programs. So children associate counseling center now, at least, and also the parents, with a lot of wellness, growth, personality development, and then they feel free to just come and talk.
Yes, ma'am. And you said that it's if parents also talk about their problems, they discuss it at the dinner table, which is a really nice way of going about it.
Yeah, such simple things.
Yes.
Even like, if I add to that, Millie, even when you're taking your children shopping, just discussing. It's a normal, casual, everyday discussion on how your day was, or all these things make a very big difference. Or sitting with your children and watching, movies which educate on mental health conditions or emotions. Like, for example, Inside Out is one great movie. Or even like when you're watching some other movies wherein you can discuss about the characters. This encourages children to be open. So yeah, sorry, I cut you there. Your question was?
It's okay. So yes, so this basically tells us that how important the environment around us is. On that basis, we'll proceed in the right way towards our illness or whatever problems we are facing. So, once the difficulties have been detected, how can those around the children, the parents, teachers, and also the peers, how can they help? And also, how can the schools provide mental health support in terms of treatment?
Yeah. So, Millie, of course, there are certain accommodations, adaptations, modifications that we need to do, that need to be individualized for the student. For example, if it's a behavior modification strategy for a child with the ADHD, so a simple thing like, if a child has hyperactivity on the ADHD scale, and if the child finishes their work, some children are very fast and they finish their work and then they end up disturbing rest of the class because they have nothing to do. So simple accommodations like having extra worksheets for this child. So if the parents also are aware that, okay, keeping the child positively engaged like this reduces any chances for restlessness, or keeps the child positively occupied, that instills that self control in the child. So those strategies can be used at home also. So these things really work when we are working in tandem. So when we identify a particular issue, a certain behavioral intervention plan is made for that particular child, and then on that plan both the stakeholders, all three rather, student, parent, and teacher, expectations are set, and then we work according to that plan. So in that way, many accommodations can be done. So, but if I have to say in short, I feel it's important, like we see the setting part of things, like where the child studies, which class is in, what grade, and what accommodations are possible in that area. Same with the economic background, what accommodations are possible in that area. So the settings is very important. Material, what kind of equipment, materials that we can provide, that will provide extra support to the child. Is it some academic material or some other things for example, behavioral charts, these kind of things. Then instructions, what kind of instructions, the way we communicate. So the teachers are rather trained on, okay, this is the way, this is the language that the child understands better in. Maybe for some children, repeating the same instructions again and again doesn't work. They get overwhelmed and shut down, and then so that way we have to individualize for every child, and also the way that the child can respond to you. So if a child is going through grief, probably, if that is one of the case that we are seeing at that moment, then we have to see that, okay, what would be the best for the child. Maybe the child doesn't want to be as verbal in those moments. So can the child express himself even academically, whether through drawing or whether through giving one line answers or something like that. So this is only in severe grief cases, but just saying that keeping all this in mind. So the setting part, the material that we use, the instructions that we, the way that we communicate, and the way that the student responds. So keeping this in mind, we can make a plan for the child, and that helps the way that we support or the way that we adapt things for the student in school and at home.
So besides parents and teachers, how can the peers also contribute in this?
Right.
Because they are the same age as the children, and so that they don't always see these things as instructions they have to follow.
Absolutely. Yeah, I forgot to mention about the peers part. Yes, peers are it's one class, one family. So what we do is several times we have these sensitization programs for students. We sensitization. So for example, it's a child with autism in the class who could have mild to moderate autism, sometimes severe. So the students need to be mentally prepared. And it's their right to understand why this child is so unique or why this child is so different than what